Stuart Cameron talking rugby, and we're here at Murrayfield. The announcement of the team against France, very interesting one as well. Stuart Hogg at fullback getting his first start. On the wings, Rory Lamont and Lee Jones, Sean Lamont and Graham Morrison, the centre partnership, Greg Laidlaw and Mike Blair, the halfback pairing. In the front row, it's Alan Jacobson, Ross Ford, Jeff Cross, Richie Gray and Jim Hamilton in the Boiler House, John Barclay in for the injured Alistair Strokosh, Ross Rennie and David Denton in the back row. Substitutes, Scott Lawson, Ed Kalman, Alistair Kellock, Richie Vernon, Chris Cussiter, Duncan Weir and Nick DeLuca. And with me is Grahame Macgregor. Graham, that's the team. No real surprises in the pack, but a few on the outside.
No, as you say, the pack just chooses itself, really. Obviously, with Strokosh injury, we knew that Barclay would come in at number 6, not his usual position, but he's a pretty good player anywhere in the back row. But the back's more interesting there. A couple of players maybe could be said to have had their places removed onto the bench because of the last match. Nick DeLuca maybe the big surprise there, but as we know, yellow carded and maybe didn't go down too well in that respect, so he drops to the bench. But to be fair, Graham Morrison has been putting in some good games for Glasgow, so he gets in there, and it's a pretty big looking back division as a result of that. Lee Jones, I suppose, the smallest, but he's nearly 6 foot, so it's a pretty solid one to face France. The other change the back, of course, is Mike Blair coming in to replace Chris Cussiter. Some might say that's Chris Cussiter's mistake at the beginning of the second half being punished there, but I think it's more like the fact that Mike Blair really and Greg Laidlaw obviously are half-back partners at Edinburgh, have been going so well, and they have really gone better at half-back for Scotland, and the occasions we've seen them doing that, and maybe that's, I'm sure, much more the reason that Mike Blair's come in there. So in a way, really, pretty much the side we would expect. There's not too much experimentation on the bench. We might have expected to have seen Rory Jackson, but Duncan Weir keeps his place, yet to be capped, of course, the only uncapped player in the 22. Andy Robinson, of course, rather reluctant, as we know, to make too many changes, wants to get a bit of a settled team. One of the criticisms of recent times, of course, in a sense, of course, this is another change, but maybe it's just the right blend. That remains to be seen.
Big question about Max Evans, of course. His ankle injury didn't hold up, so sadly he won't be taking any part at the sellout on Sunday against France. But would he have been picked at centre?
That's a difficult one. I would have imagined, well, the option was there, wasn't it, because of the decision to actually not include Nick DeLuca in the starting 15. He could have brought in Evans to centre, but I think he might have been more likely to remain on the wing, and but that's a lottery. We'll never know the answer to that one. But it's an unfortunate loss. Max Evans, a great player, a very talented player, and I'm sure he'd have loved to be taught against the French, but alas, injury takes him out.
Chris Cussiter, of course, being dropped. Also, with Mike Blair coming in, a lot of people would say, well, that's going to give us more quick ball to play with, because Chris does seem to like to slow it down.
Yeah, that seems to have been evident in the games so far, when you could contrast the play of both Cussiter and Blair. Cussiter really does like to set up the backs so many times at the back of rucks, and you see him just himself waiting on everything to be right before he whips the ball out, whereas a little bit more dynamic, I think, Mike Blair, and obviously knowing Laidlaw and his play as well, those two things go together, and I think when we've seen them on, the game has flowed that bit more, and that's exactly what I'm sure Andy Robinson and the rest of the guys are looking for, just to get those big backs going, and maybe bring Stuart Hogg into the equation as well.
Of course, there was some talk of Stuart Hogg possibly starting at centre, but he is at full-back, making his debut in front of a packed stadium at Murrayfield. And for a 19-year-old, it's just never ceases to amaze me how the guy is so grounded, so down to earth, and taking it all in his stride.
Yes, he certainly has innate talent of that, there's no denying, and brought up through the system, of course, not exactly appeared from nowhere like perhaps would have happened in the past. So we've been aware of him for a wee while, but funny to say that, and he's only 19, but he certainly has that daring do that we're looking for in Scotland, really, that we saw a fantastic try he scored for the A side, one of the surely the tries of the season here in Scotland in any game, and he certainly showed up in the game against Wales, as we know. Didn't really get awarded the try. He should have been, of course, but he was in there and nearly scored another one. So I think an exciting player, one that probably starting at 15, he can see all in front of him. He can join in when he wants. He feels because he seems to have that eye for just the right time to come into the game and take it forward. So it'll be interesting to see just how he does. We hope he survives well in that position, but of course he can play in other positions as well. Standoff even been mentioned, but from going from a situation where we seem to have problems with standoff, we actually have several players vying for the standoff position at the present moment. But Greg Laidlaw, a good chance really to sort of cement his position at number 10, one feels, if he has a good game with Mike Blair as halfback against France.
5 borderers actually starting, which is a tremendous thing. Got a fifth of the team, so we're going to herald that, of course. But going back to Stuart Hogg again, very exciting talent, and there seems to be a real big buzz around Scottish rugby for this young man.
Well, that's right. I think there's a lot of talk about it. I mean, the fact he didn't score that try, in many ways, he did score it as we know, but he wasn't allowed it, sort of almost raised the anticipation around him even more so, because it was an incredibly athletic thing he actually did when you see it in slow motion. And I think, yes, he's going to be the kind of player you feel that if he gets and when he gets the ball in his hand on Sunday, he's going to be... It'll cause that kind of ripple of excitement in the crowd, because he has that kind of swagger to him, and he's very confident, and it's remarkable. He's only 19-year-old. A lot of people compare him, of course, with Jim Rennick, who also was 19 when he played for Scotland, and he's actually been mentoring Stuart Hogg, both, of course, Hoyk players, and if he can be as good as Jim Rennick was, fantastic player, obviously one of the greatest ever Scottish players, it'll be saying something for Stuart Hogg.
But this has been something that's been missing in Scottish rugby. Until Richie Gray came on the scene, we didn't really have any stars, did we? I mean, there's obviously Chris Patterson, but of the youngsters coming up, there was no one really setting the world alight. And then all of a sudden, Richie Gray, posted all over the place, and now we feel that Stuart Hogg could be the next one. Yeah,
well, I suppose teams do need their stars, and we've had a lot of journeymen, a lot of hard-working, good professionals, but none too exciting. I mean, Chris Patterson obviously now left the scene, very, very popular player and around for so long, of course. But yes, it's good to have, and we have, of course, in the bench someone like Duncan Weir, and there's one or two other players, as we know, who are of a similar ilk, who are just dying to get through. David Denton, of course, is there already, and has proven that he's certainly ready for the fray at this level, and man of the match, and pretty close to again in the game down in Wales. So yeah, we need our stars, and Stuart Hogg is one of them, and Greg Laidlaw in his new life at number 10 may be yet another one.
Now, you mentioned David Denton. Some people in very high places said that he wasn't going to be quite ready yet this season. Ron Moffat, let's name names, he did actually say that he felt he needed a couple more years, but he certainly proved that wrong.
Well, what's the old one? If you're good enough, you're old enough, or whatever. But he certainly has proven to be a really solid customer, a tremendous ball carrier, and one again that the players can play off, and when he's on the go again, you can feel the crowd begin that ripple just of excitement when he starts charging down the field there and making yardage, which he's been doing in his 2 starts that he's had so far. So hopefully more of that against France. And
Ross Rennie, of course, another who's burst on the scene and really taken his chance.
That's right. I mean, he really has taken over from John Barclay. Barclay's only in the team because of Strokosh being out, and Ross Rennie's playing in their preferred position of both players at number 7. And yes, he had that little unfortunate just making his pass too late against England. Who knows what might have happened if the ball had gone away earlier. But overall, in the 2 games so far, he has been an outstanding flanker at number 7. And again, hopefully this sort of new blend, really, we have a lot of back row players in Scotland, and with injury and loss of form and so on, we've been ringing the changes, but hopefully this blend will prove to be just the right one. They're all pretty fast, they're all pretty powerful, and pretty good rugby footballers.
The front row, we've got Jeff Cross, former Gala player, of course, always flag that up. In because Ewan Murray doesn't play on a Sunday, we know about that. Ross Ford, hooker and captain. And Chunk, Alan Jacobson, the most cap prop in Scottish rugby history. 62 caps already. He'll get 63 on Sunday.
Yeah, the front row is, I think, pretty well chose itself, really. We knew it's another Sunday game, so Jeff Cross is in there. But who's to say that Ian Murray might have got his place back anyway. Jeff Cross had been playing tremendously well. He concentrates now. He tells us every time we speak to him on his job and what he's got to do, and doing the best he can do at that, and not tackling players in the air and so on. He's put that episode away behind him 2 or 3 years ago now. And Jacobson, tremendously experienced, can cause havoc in the front row, and Ross Ford, of course, the captain, trying to combine the role of hooker and obviously captain, and hopefully so far doing pretty well. But it's nicer to be able to captain a winning team, I'm sure.
The Scottish fans would love to see some tries.
Sure would, but they'd love to see Scotland winning. I would go for the 3-0 win because we need to get a W in our column sometime at Silver. What say? Yeah, we're moving forward, because if we score 5 tries, still lose, and then you lose the next game by a couple of penalties or something like that, you still haven't progressed. And we've really got to start getting the feeling of winning matches. And it'll be difficult against France, but we are at home, full crowd here at Murrayfield. We couldn't have a better setup for getting the train back on the tracks.